to my YouTube channel. Today, and this is a couple days too late, but for those of you who don't know, Donald Trump won the presidency, and this video is pretty much just going to be a summarization, a little bit of an analysis as to the voter demographic shift from 2020 to 2024, and my opinions on what the future is going to look like for the country. So for those of you who don't really care about my opinion and analysis, just skip to like 3 or 4 minutes down the road. I'll give you a little bit of my background. For those of you who don't know, I am a conservative. I live in Florida. And I did vote for Donald Trump in this election. However, I'm probably not the typical Trump voter in the sense that I did not support him in the Republican primaries this cycle. I do live in Florida, so I am a big Ron DeSantis guy, so I did vote for him, and I would have even supported Nikki Haley over Trump, simply for a few reasons. One, when I vote in a primary, yes, would it be nice to vote for the candidate I 100% agree on? Yes, but if, for example, Ben Carson or somebody like that I know has no chance of actually winning the nominee, I will actually vote for somebody who I think has a chance to win the nominee, as well as win the actual presidency against, in this case it was Kamala, but against whoever, is the opponent. I did not think Trump had the best shot to win. Obviously I was wrong, but leading into the election, I did look at the polls. I was more optimistic about Trump than I initially thought, and the big thing for me was in 2020, he lost to Joe Biden, who I think is a flawed candidate. I think his mental incompetency was very relevant and apparent, and he still beat Trump. And I did not think Trump is the type of person to, he's a very polarizing figure, very divisive, very out there. So I think if you're not with him, you're against him. I don't think there was a lot of in between there. So I was a little surprised by this. I did not think Trump would be able to pull anybody in his side. And if we actually look at his path to the presidency here, he actually won all 7 swing states. So he won Wisconsin, he won Michigan, and Pennsylvania was actually the big one. So for those that did not actually watch election night, I stayed up until about 12:30 at night, so it was not 100% called, but he was like 92% chance to win. And this was the big reason why. So based on the early states that were called, like Georgia and Florida, Kamala's only path to victory was Pennsylvania. And when Trump flipped Pennsylvania, and it was looking like he was going to win, and they called the state, it was pretty much over, so I went to bed pretty much almost certain that he was going to win. So Pennsylvania was really Kamala's only path to victory. After Georgia and like Florida was called, she needed to win Pennsylvania, and she didn't. So that's kind of what I knew. And then you got North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada. So he won all 7 swing states. Biggest surprise was this right here, the popular vote. He won by 3 million, which was a surprise to me. And then Florida. Now it's not the fact that he won Florida; it's the margin that he won Florida by, which was 13%. Florida is not, a down the line red state like Oklahoma or Kansas. In 2008 and 2012, Florida actually voted for Obama both times, and it wasn't until 2016 they voted for Trump. 2016, 2020 voted for Trump, and now 2024 won Trump won by 13%, which is a huge margin, 1.5 million votes. And I think this is mainly to do with the border, um, and immigration. So he won. This is countrywide. He won 45% of the Latino vote overall. And Florida obviously has, in Miami, and there's some Cubans, and there is more of a Latino vote than I think in almost any other state. Probably Texas, maybe. But other than that, Florida's got a big Latina population. And obviously, when they swing towards Trump, that's for a Republican, 45% of the whole vote is unheard of. He also won like 25% of the black vote nationwide, which is doesn't sound like a lot, but for a Republican, I believe that's the most in like the last 20 years. Um, and so black males and Latinas in general, Latinos, 45% total. Um, that's kind of the big demographic shift that pretty much won him this election. He won the white vote by a few points. It was like 54 to 46, but that was kind of expected only because he wins like white male votes like 65% or something like that. Um, so that's not that much of a surprise. So that was kind of his path to the presidency. Now, if you kind of want to discuss why he won, I think it was less about his campaign and more about the left's inability or incompetency on how they actually selected Kamala Harris. Um, and it was mainly to do, and no, I haven't heard, I don't listen to mainstream media, but I haven't really heard anybody touch on this. Um, it was the inability of the Democrats to admit that they were wrong about Joe Biden, in terms of his mental state. I have two grandparents with forms of dementia and mild imperative decline, and when we first started to see signs of that, their short-term memory kind of go. They kind of slur their words. They don't even know. Like my grandma doesn't even know. She can't say like basic words. Like she's like pass me the napkin. She can't even. She's like pass me the thingy. Like she can't even say basic words. And when there were first signs of this, like it took a few years for it to really get bad. And I think in 2020, I would argue we saw signs of Joe Biden have this. And obviously, again, after a couple of years, it gets even worse and worse. And then obviously, it was so bad that the Democrats finally admitted he was too incompetent to run again. And in my opinion, it was a year or two too late. Meaning, by the time they realized Joe Biden was unfit, or at least I think they realized before, but they just didn't want to admit it. They did not have an election, a primary. So I don't think the most qualified candidate won. Um, I don't know who that person would be, um, but you want the most popular candidate, obviously, and I don't think Kamala was that, unfortunately. She was elected the border czar, in charge of the border, and um, immigration was way higher than it was under Trump, and obviously that means that uh, crime and drugs go up. um, and it that's pretty much I think what lost it. If they had an actual, if they did it a year or two sooner, and they realized, okay, we need a new incumbent instead of Joe Biden, and they had their normal primaries, I think you would have got somebody more qualified, or at least more liked by the Democrats than Kamala. And I think that was the main reason why, like along with the poor economy, and we can debate about the actual root cause of the economy, of why it was so bad and why inflation was so high. Um, but regardless, it was bad. Prices were way up. Gas prices were way up. So, whatever you want to call, like, do you think Trump's solution, blah blah blah? We can argue about that, but it was that bad, and people did turn to Trump as that. And I think it was also the media. So you had I would say a larger segment of the Republican Party than the media portrayed that actually did not like what Trump did in terms of denying the results, and he still does, the 2020 election. Um, the Stormy Daniels things coming out. Um, and I was in that box, by the way. Like I said, I voted for Ron DeSantis in the Republican primaries. I was not all aboard the Trump train. I had concerns about him, or at least in terms of his personal character. I don't really have any concerns about his policy, but that was their to me. It was less about them getting their voters out and more about limiting the Republican support for Trump. And as usual, they shot themselves in the foot with their messaging from the media, spreading lies and especially about the 2025, the Project 2025, which was made by a conservative, but it was not endorsed or even mentioned by Trump. And they falsely put Trump's plan was going to be for Project 2025 when it obviously wasn't. And it turned me off to them, and ultimately that's what mainly swung my vote to Trump, because I was probably gonna vote for a third party or just not vote in the presidency. Um, um, but I ultimately did. That's kind of what swayed me. All the lies, and I think Americans were tired of it. And moving forward, I think the Democratic Party has to shift their focus. Um, in, in a lot of people, the political advertising from Kamala was, a lot of it was focused on abortion, um, and obviously that's a incredibly polarizing topic. But in terms of actual relevancy, let's say Kamala got elected, Roe v. Wade was already overturned. They can't do anything about that. So what exactly, in terms of policy, was she going to implement that Trump's isn't? Donald Trump, by the way, is a super pro-choice president for the Republican Party, and that's actually, for me, I'm a pro-lifer. That's actually something I have an issue with Trump, is that he wasn't so outspokenly pro-life, um, and he's been on record multiple times saying um, he's pro-abortion in the sense of if there's rape, incest, or danger to the mother, and he wants to leave it up to states, which um, if you are a pro-choicer, I don't think I think you're gonna realize in Donald Trump's last 4 years, you're gonna realize that you don't need to be as worried or scared. It's just fear mongering by the media again, by Kamala Harris and their political advertising, that it's just not true. I don't think you have anything to worry about. We've already seen in some states that are more pro-life that um, you can still get an abortion. Some of it, I believe, most states that have had tougher stances on abortion are 6 weeks, so they're still allowing it. Um, but yeah, I think that was just poor political campaigning by the Democrats, and for I don't even want to touch about transgender stuff. Um, and I think this is the bottom line. I think there was a shift in the culture of America. Um, for example, I'll use the Me Too movement. Um, but um, the Me Too movement was started, and justifiably so. Um, Especially in the workplace, there were men, powerful men, rich men, taking advantage of that, and using it to sexually assault, abuse, rape, um, you know, uh, women that did not have as much power, and that were helpless in that. And so there was a place for that. And then I think in recent years, you've seen the pendulum swing. Now I think it's gone too far. Now I think too many people um, are quick to believe a woman, and they ultimately ruin innocent men's lives in small cases. and you have this anti-man, um, this anti-masculinity, toxic masculinity, all these labels, and it's not just men that I think are voting against this. It's also some women too that that disagree with this. And I think when you look at some of these minority populations, especially the Latino community, they value strong family. Um, they value that stuff, and I think that's just a losing side to be on, and especially in terms of transgender, when you're ignoring reality by calling um, a biological man a woman now. When you ignore that biological truth, that in itself is bad. But then it's the fact that, again, it's the overboard in terms of the rhetoric. Now, if you basically believe in science and truth, that you're somehow transphobic, that you're a bigot, that you're sexist, that you're this, um, that stuff is just turning off most Americans. And I think this election, I thought we it was 2022. I remember the big talk was that there was going to be this big red wave, and we didn't really see that. I think it was just a couple years too late, or a couple years too early, if you will, in the projections. And I think you saw that take into effect in this election cycle. So if we look at the Senate here, the Republicans have flipped the Senate. There's one independent. This guy's from Maine. Um, I don't know which way he leans, left or right, um, but he is an independent. But either way, we have control. We needed 50. We had 53. We gained 4 seats. Um, and yeah, if you look at Texas, big one, Ted Cruz, Rick Scott, who I don't really particularly like, but he is going to vote on the Republican side. So very close race in Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Yeah, Michigan was point three, and in Pennsylvania was point four. So very close contested races. Um, and then this is where I get excited. It looks like we're gonna flip the House. It's not. We don't have the majority yet. We still have some Alaska, Arizona, some stuff in California, Iowa, Oregon, and Maine. Um, but we should get another 4 or 5 seats, so we should get the majority in the House as well. So if you are conservative, if you are a Republican, I think you need to be super excited. We have the Senate, we have the House, or we should have the House. We have the presidency now, and we still have the Supreme Court. And by the way, on the Supreme Court, in the next 4 years, there's possibly two left leaning judges that might retire, or at least I think one left leaning and one right. But obviously, either way, even the right guy, he's older. So if we flip that to a younger Republican, they'll be in for another 30, 40 years. So this is huge. This is a very important presidency, and I think if you are on the left and you are listening to this, I hope um, you you turn off the media, and you can kind of see through it. And over half the country did want this to happen. So I think you have to ask yourself and stop demonizing the other side and realize that we want lower prices for everything. We want a more secure border. We want less crime to be happening. Um, I think Donald Trump, for all of his faults and warts, and yes, I have my concerns about him. I think more importantly, beyond the borders of the U.S., you will see um, less violence, and ultimately, even if you don't even really care about that, if we're honestly being honest with ourselves, from an economic standpoint and financial standpoint, if these wars stop, that's 30-40 billion dollars that we've given to Ukraine and Israel. um, we won't have to be doing that anymore because there won't be any wars, hopefully. So I am gonna hold Donald Trump accountable though, because he does, at least for the first 2 years of his administration, he will have a red Senate and most likely red House. So stuff needs to get done. There's no excuses. Um, so we'll see. Um, but if you guys enjoyed this, um, please leave a like and please leave some comments, guys. My last video had like 160 views and not one single comment. So comment your opinion. Be civil. Let's debate and discuss what we think, and hopefully you guys enjoyed. And either way, whatever side you're on, uh, hopefully we come together a little bit more than we have in the past. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Peace.